So it basically turned into the same exact thing that I was doing in Division 1. In Division 1, I was going killing the name bosses. In Division 2, I was going and shooting some crates that were stuck in trees. that's the truth. That's what people did. People farmed those damn crates, just like they farmed the freaking named bosses. If you didn't end up seeing my previous video, what I ended up doing was deleting my level 19 Dark Zone character. So this was a character that I actually specifically kept at level 19 just so I could play in the level 19 Dark Zone in Division 1. I ended up deleting him so I could create a new character because the Dark Zone in Division 1 unfortunately is rather dead, especially for the low level characters. So I ended up creating a new character just for the purpose of running through the story mode. And then in that Division video, I ended up completing the Precinct Siege mission, defeating Ripper, and now I'm going to be moving into the actual city of New York, leaving Brooklyn, and just kind of talking about a lot of the initial impressions that I remember having about playing Division 1. Now, I know this is going to kind of sound a little bit silly considering I'm wearing a clown mask from the end game that I've basically, just put on this new character. But the thing that I liked about Division 1, especially, more than Division 2, was that the realism seemed a bit more realistic. You know what I mean? Like, Division 1 seemed like a story of survival in a disaster situation. It really felt gripping and compelling. And of course, fast forward a few years, people kind of have a little bit more sense of how that probably would actually feel. I mean, toilet paper jokes aside, you have to think about just how something like this would happen. And I think the Division did a pretty wonderful job. Division 2, I mean, it really, I don't know, to me, in a post-apocalyptic, post-pandemic type world, I think it kind of just missed the mark. It got into this like overly political theater type mode, and that wasn't interesting to me. I can't really say that I care for the story of Division 2 that much. But in Division 1, starting off, right from the get-go, getting blown up, getting pulled into a chopper, getting some adrenaline stabbed into your chest. I mean, it does kind of seem funny a little bit. In this chopper, Fei Lao's the one who's like got a busted up leg, missing an eyeball, and yet, you just get stabbed through the heart with some adrenaline, and you're fine, you're good to go. Like, it's a little silly. I wish they would have kind of maybe done it the other way around, where you're not so bad and you're the one who's like trying to save Fei. That would have made a little bit more sense to me. But either way, I think it's they got to start the game some way. They just kind of did it in a weird way to me. Something I like to do in Division is just kind of look at things and just observe and just see if I can find any patterns, or see if I can see anything that kind of makes sense in the scene. If you look obviously directly behind the player, on the back wall of the chopper, you've got the gas mask, or just the chemical mask with the hole in it. Obviously, to me, it's, oddly reminiscent of something like the coyote mask. And I just kind of wonder, it's kind of fun to think about these things, like just, hey, look, it's the coyote mask version 1. If you saw the other, the other video that I did, about, just remembering the Division, you probably, you saw the Warhound 1.0, just the walking sentry turret thing, 3-legged sentry turret, so obviously, it's just funny to look at some of the things that are in Division 1 and just like kind of wonder if half of this stuff is just, stuff that was supposed to be in Division 1, but then they just stopped developing it and put it in Division 2. It really feels like that a lot of the time. So I just kind of found that to be interesting. The storytelling is not really the strong suit of the game, but I think it's more along the lines of the story that the environment provides, right? I mean, it's really hard to create a game that's mostly based on constantly progressing, constantly, getting gear and all that stuff, and then and also being a large co-op style game. But then to actually have it, telling story during that time, I mean, that's one of the biggest reasons why I don't actually like playing the story co-op, because a lot of the times you kind of feel rushed. You kind of want to, get through this stuff. Maybe somebody else wants to get through this stuff. It's always just a battle of whether you're paying attention to the actual story, or whether you're actually, just like trying to skip through and get as much, done as fast as possible in your group, so you can progress while everyone's still there. That's the kind of thing where I like to actually focus on the story, and I like to actually like pay attention to the world, which is something that you can't really do in co-op unless everyone wants to do it. And then of course, if you're not always on the same page, of course it just kind of, it gets annoying. Sometimes you get frustrated with other players, or your friends just like, why are you taking so long? Just get over here already. No, I want to read this. I see this thing. It's like, it's just a piece of paper, man. Just move along. I mean, like, sometimes like there's a sign that you just want to read, like for example, that memorial back there. I mean, I remember when I first played it, I looked at the memorial, and of course, it's reminiscent of 9/11. It just evokes a very strong emotional response, like whether that's, a sense of patriotism, whether it's a sense of, pride or loyalty or anger, like there's something there. A lot of these things in Division kind of evoke this, like they evoke an emotional response that, I mean, you don't have to necessarily agree one way or another, but there were a lot of moments where I was angry, a lot of moments where I was just like, I mean, baffled, like how could this be a good idea? Like, why would they do this? I mean, if you look at, some specific instances, like one that I really, really didn't appreciate, I don't know if that's the right word, but I really felt disgusted. Like, I really wanted to just go out and kill some Rikers. And that was in the Lexington Event Center. You end up going, upstairs, I think, to this Echo, where you've got, like a bunch of Rikers are sitting down with like, a bunch of like tied up JTF or whatnot and just playing games with them. Like there's one JTF guy who's become like a dartboard. There's one JTF guy who is like playing music. And if he, doesn't play a song or something like that, he gets shot. I can't remember exactly. But then there was one where it was like two JTF guys, drinking. They were like playing a drinking game. The Rikers were making them play a drinking game, and apparently one of the drinks was like drain cleaner, and one of them was alcohol. That's what they said. And it's like one of you guys is getting the drink. That's alcohol, but the other one's getting drain cleaner. So figure it out. Who gets what, and so they just both take the shots. But it turns out, the Rikers just made them both drain cleaner, and both the guys are just like, choking to death, basically. Their stomachs and their throats are burning out. So there's powerful moments in the game, and they tried to recreate stuff like that in Division 2. They did, but without a lot of the, I don't know, the depth, without a lot of the background, without a lot of the actual like in-your-face story that they're presenting it to you, it just doesn't work as well. I think one of the strongest moments in Division 2 was there was the one settlement that got destroyed by the True Sons. They basically launched the DC-62 into it or something like that, and it killed like everyone in the settlement except for like a few people who were hiding in the basement or something like that. Few people were hiding in the basement of that church or the university or something. I forget. But those were the only people that survived. And you look over there, and it's like a bunch of, dead crops, people laying, dead on the ground. And it is, it could have been a very powerful moment. But in the way that they did it, it just kind of seemed like they glossed it over. Like no one cared. Like, okay, that happened. That you go to a mission, afterwards, like, oh, we're going to make sure this never happens again. And it's kind of like, all right, that's it. Like, I don't know. It just didn't seem like there was a connection in Division 2 with the actual events and the world. Like they just had stuff going on and, okay, we're going to go do it now. It felt a little bit disconnected, and I didn't like that. And Division 1, it really just kind of, it doesn't necessarily make everything like, interconnected, like you're doing this because of this and because of this, but it's there. You once you see it, once you experience it, it's kind of hard to go, away from that. Once you hear the story of Keener, like, you don't think necessarily that he's a bad guy. You kind of understand where he's coming from. When you experience, the echoes through him, and I think that's one of the great things, one of the great opportunities that I think Division 1 missed was the story of the first wave. I think that if they would have had some echo missions, let's call it like that, like a mission where you're actually, you enter the dark zone, but as a Division, first wave agent, and you complete, whatever mission, kind of like a Shade reenactment or Echo reenactment type mission. And I think, if they would have explained a lot of what happened in the Dark Zone a little bit better, would have went into some more detail with that stuff, I think it would have been a lot more interesting from a story perspective. And I would have loved to play that, just seeing, how the Dark Zone fell, how the JTF abandoned a lot of these agents, and, stuff like that. I would have loved to see that. Anyway, kind of went on a little tangent there. Like I said, with Keener, you saw why he did it. You kind of saw that he got abandoned, that they were just, pulling out, that they weren't doing anything, whatever, they're on their own. And of course, this kind of makes you, you're still going after him, but you don't necessarily think like, okay, this guy is the worst, and in fact, I don't want to, but I kind of agree with him. And this is something in a lot of ways I think they tried to do a very similar situation with the leader of the Outcasts. I forget what her name was, but they tried to make her more human. Her final mission, you get to experience her going to the zoo, seeing the animals with her daughter. Right, I think it was like a polar bear or something like that, and they just talking about the mama protecting the baby, and that was kind of like. It was kind of like one of those moments where it was like, okay, like she went crazy. Like I get it. She lost her shit. But at the same time, it's not really like a build up, like they're not making a slow progression of story. They're just kind of like, oh, we need to put in a reason why you're supposed to care. Like it sucks, and you get it, like the whole aspect of the mother protecting the daughter and, feeling guilty and angry and, just wanting revenge. Like, I get it. But the way that they do a lot of things in Division 2 is they just kind of throw it in there like afterthought. It's like, oh, we need to kind of explain something here. Okay, let's put it on. Let's just put it at the end there. And the bolted on effect is a large portion of Division 2. It just kind of feels like you're just doing stuff to do stuff. And that's, what I don't like about Division 2. Now in Division 1, a lot of the stuff, even if it really didn't feel like it was directly connected, did kind of feel connected in a way. Not only, okay, so in Division 1, you've got side missions, encounters, and then your main missions. Now, the encounters were something that was largely kind of seen as like busy work, and the same thing with the side missions. That these are ways to progress your character and progress, kind of the advancement of the game. So your side missions basically gave you the most experience, and the encounters were a way to unlock new skills, talents, perks, that kind of stuff. Well, the whole point of the encounters was to, give you basically the equivalent of like shade points. So you'd get a certain number of points that you would then invest into research and unlock certain things from your base operations. Well, of course, a lot of them, depended on what the actual event was. Like a lot of the medical stuff was, like virus research. Some of the weapons related things, firearms related stuff was, like stopping the enemy from doing, armed transactions with each other's factions. Like stopping the rioters from buying arms from the Rikers and stuff like that. And then you also had the blue enemy security wing encounters, which were largely designed around, like maybe I think they were rescuing hostages or defeating like a stronghold of enemies, that kind of thing. But they kind of tied back because you were actively helping the people of the city, and as you helped the people of the city, as you helped gather medical supplies, or as you helped different aspects, you got points to build up your base. And, by building up your base, you unlock different perks that, made it easier for you to go out and continue in the city. And of course, so these don't necessarily have a direct relation, story-wise. But it goes into kind of the whole basket, right? So like you're doing these things, progressing throughout, the city. And of course, by doing this, you're unlocking new things and kind of expanding your power base, so to speak. By freeing people, by, rescuing supplies, you're freeing up things to make your base better. And one of the more interesting points, that I can think of with this early area, I never really liked a lot of the busy work that they had in Division 1. Like the encounters were okay, for the first couple. The side missions were okay for the first couple. And then, I largely didn't really care that much to do them. I wanted my, points to upgrade the base, and that was all I cared about. Like this, the side missions, they could just, whatever. They could sit there until I came back whenever I felt like it, just to clean out my map. And that was a bit unfortunate. I wish they would have had some more reusable, assets. And I think Division 2 tried to fix this a lot of the way. You generally get people who say that Division 2's light zone or, open world area that's not the dark zone was better than the Division. And I can understand why people say this. And I would say that this is part of the, one of the things that I raged about for months in, the Division. They left the open world in the Division 1 largely abandoned. I mean, there was stuff, going on. There was life. They had the wandering boss and stuff like that. But as a whole, once you beat the game, that area kind of almost felt dead. Like there was no real reason to go anywhere. Like you'd go on a specific route to find the name bosses, but that was it. Like you didn't have a reason to explore. You didn't have a reason to go back to a lot of these things. And, the side missions, the encounters, they didn't ever respawn. A lot of people praise the Division 2 for having this just immensely populated, constantly rotating active supply of stuff to do in the open world. Honestly, that novelty wore off like after the first 2 months. I pretty much only did the supply drop run. I would go and do all the little supply drops, shoot down the little crates in the open world in Division 2. That's what I would do because, again, it doesn't matter that you could redo these things. They were boring. So it basically turned into the same exact thing that I was doing in Division 1. In Division 1, I was going killing the name bosses. In Division 2, I was going and shooting some crates that were stuck in trees. That's the truth. Like, that's what people did. People farmed those damn crates, just like they farmed the freaking named bosses. And, people are trying to tell me, like, oh my god, the Division 2's, open world area is so much better. Is it? Is it really? Like, do you even know? Like, these things that are just on repeat, like, these missions, right? These little open world things. How do they compare to the encounters that were in Division 1? In Division 2, you turn off the propaganda, you rescue some hostages, you attack the convoy, whatever. I don't even remember. There was like the drone one. There was the target range. That one got cheesed until they nerfed it. But off the top of my head, I don't really remember all of those little side things that to do in the Division 2 open world. In Division 1, a lot of these things are pretty much the same. They just don't repeat. They're not like constantly respawning in different locations because that's not how they programmed it. I mean, if they had like actually just added some of these things back into the world so you could redo these things, with higher difficulty enemies, that would be the same thing that Division 2 had. But I think that's pretty much the reason why they didn't. They needed a reason to say that the Division 2 is better than Division 1. So if they went back and fixed everything that was wrong with the open world in Division 1, well, when they released Division 2, they couldn't say like how they fixed the game. They couldn't say like all the things that they improved from Division 1. And that was, just strikingly obvious to me. Like if you look at it again, you have these open world events that are basically the same thing that Division 1 had. The only difference is they just keep reappearing. And to me, that doesn't sound like a vast improvement. They had the hunter things, which, I mean, that was fine if you were actually one of the people that was trying to actually decode the stuff. If you weren't, if you were one of these people who's like, well, they had the hunters, but you were one of the people that just like literally looked it up online and then just did them, like I don't want to hear it. Like the hunters were pretty stupid, to be honest with you. Like I read, those the secret messages. I tried to decode them. And once everyone just kind of like followed people on the internet and just, everyone got the mask just by doing these things, you didn't even have to really like actually accomplish anything. I stopped caring, so one of those big things from the Division 2, open world, pointless to me. And then after that, the only real thing that the open world had was the control points, which, again, as I've noted in the past, was something that was actually originally intended to be in Division 1 that for some reason, somewhere along the line, they removed. So I don't consider this to be like a great upgrade. This was something that should have been in Division 1, but wasn't. So the fact that it's in Division 2 is like, okay, well, I'm glad you could have, not screwed over Division 2 for, this aspect, but, F Division 1 apparently. The other thing that they had were like the card decks, so you could take out the name bosses that were wandering around randomly. But that really wasn't much of a difference between that and the name bosses in Division 1. So, Division 2 had these name bosses, Division 1 had these name bosses. I think Division 2 had, more, and their name bosses were different, but, they're all relatively the same thing anyway. So, to be honest, the only thing that the Division 2 really had over the Division 1 was recycling. They recycled things better than Division 1 did. And that's what people are giving them praise for. So I don't necessarily think that that's a great thing. I don't necessarily think that, Division 2 did such a great job. It is improved in the sense that there's more to do and there's, a little bit more activity. And I remember going through the first little, segment of the game, before you get to the base of operations, you're kind of trying to like, clear out some areas, get some experience, get some, gear, just see what's going on before you move on. Some people, obviously, you could have just, probably ran straight to the base of operations and just started from there. But I actually, looked around, trying to see what's going on and what's up. And one of the things that constantly sticks in my mind is, like going through people's apartments. You'd find yourself, finding an open building, wandering up some stairs, finding an open door, and then the next thing you know, you're like digging through people's drawers, opening up the refrigerator, seeing what they got to eat, like grabbing a pom-pom beanie, like there was just something like that was just kind of funny about the whole situation. And I do just kind of remember thinking like, how almost empty and how the work really felt a little bit wasted in a lot of the open world in Division 1. And the reason I kind of say this is because, like there was just some mechanics, like one of them was like the lockpick. I think there was maybe like 4 or 5 doors in the entire game that you could actually open with a lockpick. And generally speaking, you would get like some pretty trash piece of gear from them. Like you might find some closets or whatnot to get like a piece of clothing from. But the gear that you would get a lot of the times was just, like a green or a blue that you already, you already basically, had something better. You already had a purple when you're getting awarded like a blue, so like a lot of the times it just didn't make sense. And that kind of annoyed me a lot. Like when you went into the first area, in New York City, after you left Brooklyn, so you go into Chelsea, and you're walking around, you're opening up these apartments and stuff like that. Like, it feels like part of this game is going to be, almost like a survival aspect. Now, I know obviously survival came later, but one of the things I liked about survival, which honestly I hated survival, I didn't like the game mode itself. One of the things I did like about it though was the fact that it added the clothing mechanic. So like clothing actually kept you warm. And honestly, I kind of liked this approach. I didn't like the eating, the drinking, every like 2 minutes. I didn't like the constant medicine that you needed to take and administer it. Like that stuff, that was tedious, and I just that was a boring mechanic. I don't like that in any game. So Division One doing it didn't make it any better. I just don't like that mechanic. But that clothing mechanic where you actually need to stay warm, I like that. And going through Division One originally, when you're collecting the stuff, like, my thought process was, why am I, like, why isn't there something more tangible tied to this? Why does it feel like they have this stuff here, but it just feels so unfinished? Like, why does it feel so disjointed from like the regular game? Like you're gathering these supplies or whatnot, but you're not really doing anything with them. Yeah, you can change your appearance, but there's only so much appearance changing that I care to do. So there needs to be something else. I want there's to be something else in the game. And what I found funny was after Chelsea, a lot of this um, apartment exploring of people's living quarters, whatnot. It kind of just stopped. A lot of it disappeared. Um, for a lot of the other areas, it seems like they never finished and doing any of the apartments, or they never finished really doing the the living world concept. And I mean, there were some, but like not nearly as much. Another thing that I noticed that I didn't like in Division One's early game was, yeah, the disappointment that I had with the subway system or the underground areas. This extends into Division Two as well. Like, I was I was completely disappointed by the way that they approached subways in Division One. If you look at the trailers, I'm not saying that they had, to have like this huge, massive, just completely, mapped out tunnel system, whatever, with no blocks, no nothing, like you could just go everywhere underground. I'm not saying that. But everyone knows that New York has a huge subway system. And the fact that they kind of took out a lot of this to make it into a, into a DLC that was mostly just procedurally generated, it kind of angered me. Like, I don't mind if they, would have done this as, their own separate thing, but they still should have included the actual subway tunnels or something, to that degree in the Division. And in Division 2, what you end up having is these sewer systems. And it just, again, it felt so annoying. Like, there's so much potential for diving into these underground areas. For making, like secret off the map areas, for making, fun things to explore, to, not maybe just making even, hidden shortcuts into specific areas, like maybe you can activate a mission while you're underground and, be able to just like come up in, the middle of the mission, and maybe even get like kind of like a different feel to the mission. Um, something that would be new and unique. I mean, there's plenty of things that you could do, plenty of things I could, talk about and suggest. But like that's one of the biggest disappointments I have with the Division. Just the carelessness with the underground areas. They portrayed them in the trailers as being some sort of like secretive little areas, but then they never really dove into them properly. But I think one of the biggest things that I liked about the Division One over the Division Two. In Division Two, obviously they tried to make the the settlement creation or the settlement upgrades and upgrading the base of operations. They tried to do something a little different, but the thing was, like, the upgrades themselves, they just didn't feel compelling. Like, they didn't feel like, oh, I got to get this one. This one's awesome. This one's a must. It just kind of felt like, okay, let me just pick something. Okay, I'm just gonna go find some more shade tech just to go get some more upgrades, like, and a lot of them just didn't have the heart that I think Division 1 did. In Division 1, when you unlocked some of these, like, for example, the masks, so you could have the contamination masks in Division 1. That was probably one of my favorite mechanics in the game. Going into the Dark Zone as a level 14, and being one of the only people who actually invested in the gas mask, oh my god, that was amazing. Obviously, I'm not going to say it was fair, but at the same time, it was kind of fair because you have the choice. Like, you can upgrade your character how you want, and if you wanted to pick, your your team ability, your ultimate, whatever the heck it was called, your big skill buff, um, you could do that. You wanted to pick the revive, you wanted to pick the armor bonus, you wanted to pick the damage bonus. You could do that. You could save up and use your points to unlock those, or you could unlock your mask filters, and that made it unique. That's one of the reasons why I love playing the 14, because you had a bunch of differences. Like, people didn't have every skill, people didn't have every talent, every ability. You didn't have the classified sets, especially. Obviously, those came later, but you didn't have the gear sets. You didn't have the classified gear sets. You didn't have any of the yellow gear, at least, except for a brief period of time where the underground launched and people figured out a way to actually cheese how they could get the high end items on a level 14 character. That was a difficult period of time for people in the level 14 Dark Zone, let me tell you. But you know, before that, when you could actually just have fun without worrying about like what was going to happen, and you could actually just fairly earn the stuff that was in the Dark Zone. A lot of that was, it was the fun thing with the 14 Dark Zone was that you could unlock these things and that you could use them because the Dark Zone had contamination zones. And of course, then once you hit 30 and you're at endgame and everyone has everything and there's no restrictions on anyone, that's kind of a little bit annoying. I would have loved to have seen, more perks, more talents, more, just like side bonuses that are only available for, a certain amount of points, so like you don't have enough points to unlock everything. And if you want the mask, then maybe you're going to lose out on damage or lose out on health regen, or maybe lose out on the amount of ammo or med kits that you can hold. Like having an actual choice there, that would have been great, because that was great in level 14 Dark Zone. But anyway, the point of me saying this is because the base of operations kind of starts it off with showing you the upgrades, showing you the paths, showing you what you need to do to get some of these perks. So if you wanted to really specialize into the healer of your group, if you really wanted to specialize into the skill build, if you really wanted to specialize into just the tanky damage dealer or whatever, you could see the talents and the stats and all that stuff that you wanted to get, and basically just try to unlock those things first. And again, because it was restricted, early on, like it actually had a very strong impact in how you played the game. In Division 2, a lot of this stuff feels very soft. Like it's not as limiting. It's not as like decisive. It doesn't really even matter that much. A lot of those perks just kind of like meh. Like I'm okay with this. Like I don't, whatever. I'll unlock this skill or I'll unlock this skill, but like I don't know. It just didn't feel as powerful as it did in Division 1. But anyway, I think that's a good place to stop it. In the next video, I'll be going through the Madison Field Hospital, rescuing Dr. Candle, and we'll, talk about some of the things that I kind of wish they would have, I guess, looked at in that mission a little bit more. Some of the things that I wish, they could have done to improve, that mission. And of course, just kind of gripe and complain about, the lack of attention that they basically gave the Division after they started working on Division 2 secretly. But, thank you guys for watching. I'll see you in the next one.